Electricast.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
You're the owner of a small business, which means you're also the tech guy, and HR, and personal assistant, and head honcho, and intern. You could use another pair of hands, like the experts you'll find at Verizon Small Business Days, April 21st through 27th. Get a free tech check, special deals, and more. Call 1-800-483-4428 or visit verizon.com/smallbusiness to book your appointment. Verizon Business.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with Merrissa Williams. Merrissa, a conscious motherhood coach, is passionate about helping women clear mental clutter so they can unlock their fullest creative potential. With a deep foundation in mindfulness and meditation, she empowers mothers to cultivate a peaceful mind, a resilient spirit, and a life that feels both fulfilling and expansive. Through her work, Merrissa guides women in navigating emotional challenges, releasing overwhelm, and fostering creativity that fuels both personal and professional growth. She understands that true success isn't about doing more, it's about living with intention, ease, and alignment. Her mission is to help mothers create a life that not only supports their ambitions, but also nourishes their well-being. By redefining balance and prioritizing self-care, she helps women build sustainable habits that allow them to thrive in business, motherhood, and beyond. Merrissa, I am really excited to have you on the show today, so welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so we're newly connected through an amazing community on Facebook called Collaborate. I'm doing this. I have to give them a little bit of credit because I am incredibly grateful for that group and the two women who founded it because for me, community is so important. I believe it's a self-care tool to have in our toolbox, that connection piece, that building of relationships. And it's really why I really love how they're pulling it together to truly be what a community is all about, not just networking and what can I get out of it, but truly building relationships and connections, which allowed me to meet you. So I'm really excited to dig into your story and what you do. So let's just get into it. You're a conscious motherhood coach, which may be a new concept for some people. So can you share what that means? And then can you take us back to the beginning and share what led you to this work and how did you know this was your calling?
Well, so conscious motherhood coaching, the way that I approach it is all about creating an intentional motherhood. So it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, just routine. And in that state of autopilot where you're just going through the motions, you're not really thinking about it. You're just moving through it. When, as opposed to being intentional, you're present and you are creating it in the moment and you're really experiencing it. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is with the way that you parent as well. So again, the autopilot comes in, but like being intentional about how you respond to your children. That's a big part of what I work on with moms as well. So reacting versus responding, reacting when it's that knee-jerk reaction that comes through. Responding, you're going to pause and you're going to take a second and before you respond. So I got into this about 9 years ago. I've just always been drawn to working with moms. So this started primarily as me I was a yoga teacher and I just learned that I loved to work with moms. I love to work with moms to be in prenatal yoga. And also I've just always been drawn to working with moms. I also noticed, so because of the way that I was raised, my mom was also into mindfulness and meditation. I noticed I had these tools that helped me to deal with the stresses of motherhood, and that there were lots of moms out here that didn't have those tools. And I just wanted to teach those tools to them so that they can enjoy their motherhood and so that they can pass them on to their kids too, because it's all about creating family unity where you're all feeling closer and being closer. And I believe that comes from respect and kindness. And those are qualities that are manifested when you are living a mindful lifestyle.
Yeah. I love the idea too that about moms because I know it's yeah, I talked about this on my one of my recent solo episode about how I never really fully respected the woman who was working in the office, but also maybe she had to leave early because her kids were sick, or she had to pick them up from school, or she took the day off because the kids were home from school sick, or whatever that was. She couldn't get a babysitter. And I always felt resentful in the beginning. Like I did. I want to be transparent about it because I'm sure I'm not the only one that has ever felt that way. And then I started realizing moms have two jobs. Like, it wasn't like she was just going home to be like, oh, she goes home and everything's all great. It's like she's going home to job number two. Well, really,
Right.
that's the most important job. And so I recognized that after the fact, after a few years, it took me a while to catch up to it. But when I did, I realized how important that job really is because you're shaping the minds of the next generation to take over things. And I just respect women who have children and are juggling multiple things, business or corporate life and kids and all of the stuff that goes on today because there's so many after school activities. There's so many activities the kids are involved in. And so that in itself, it's really like a second life. Like you have your professional life is one and your personal life is another. And it really is like living two lives and it is like having two jobs. So I just wanted to point that out because I wanted to be transparent. I thought, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's ever felt this way. And maybe I'm just the only one that's ever felt comfortable enough to express that that's how I was. I'm not like that anymore. And I just wanted to also express that I know how hard it is to be a mom. I've never been one, but I know how hard it is when I watch my friends, when I realize my upbringing and what it was like, must have been like for my mom, a single mom taking care of three children. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So thank you for
Yeah.
the work you're doing because I really feel it's important to be a mom. I'm sure it's probably one of the most beautiful, sacred moments, and to be able to shape the life of a young mind. And that's why I think women need to stick together, especially to support each other and the moms in the communities, even if you're not a mom, just being that kind of like surrogate mom, but figure and looking out for the kids. And, I don't, I guess hopefully that's what it's like today because it was similar, something like that, but not really talked about. The parents looked out for each other's kids. But I think today now, women supporting each other in not just saying that we do, but we actually are walking that walk. So anyways, I got off track a little bit, but I want to get to my next question because I really
Sure.
feel like one of the biggest challenges I believe women face is mental overload, not just from doing too much, but from the constant decision making and emotional weight of balancing business, motherhood, and their personal well being, right? So, how can women create more mental clarity so they can make decisions with confidence and ease?
So this is one main reason why I was just making a video about this yesterday. This is one reason why I promote meditation so much because it gives you the skill to be able to release that from your mind, like to be able to set it aside. And the more you practice it in your meditation, the easier it is to apply it in your real life. So during meditation, I think a common misconception is that you're supposed to just let go of all thought. You're not supposed to think at all. And if you do have thoughts, then you're doing it wrong. But that's not actually true. So it's okay. We're thinking all the time. We have like 60,000 thoughts a day. going through our mind. And they're going to pop up in meditation too. So when you are meditating, what you're doing is you're bringing your awareness, you notice the thought, and then you redirect your focus back to, for me, back to an anchor. So for me, it's usually my breath. It can be a number of things. So you're practicing that in meditation so that when you are going throughout your day-to-day life, it's easier to not pay attention really to those thoughts, to all of the overwhelming thoughts that can come through, that do often come through, because it is a lot to balance. It is a lot to juggle. It just is. But when you have that practice, then it's easier to let it go. I was saying in that video I was making yesterday that I don't feel the mental load anymore. It's not that I don't have all this stuff going on, because I do. I homeschool my kids. I'm running this business. I'm married. I have friends, and I also place a high value on taking care of myself, and I have my hobbies. There's a lot going on, but I don't feel overwhelmed by it. I don't feel loaded down by it. Another like practical thing that I do is I prioritize planning at the beginning of the week. And because I'm married, I bring my husband into it. And so it's not all on me, bringing my husband into it, into the planning. So what I'll do is I'll write down, I'll kind of brain dump everything that I'm thinking about for the week. We'll sit down, we'll talk about it, delegate. So we're going into it together as a unit rather than just maybe assuming that he knows what needs to be done and then he doesn't. And then that creates conflict, because that's what used to happen sometimes. That's how I came up with the system. So there's lots more I can throw in, but I don't know how more you want me to add in.
No, I love that. I think it's important. I love the brain dump. And one of the reasons why I love doing a brain dump is we have a lot going on in our minds. Like you were just saying, like 60,000 thoughts. And when you think about it, scientifically, they're saying that 85% of our thoughts are the same from the day before. And then there's a higher percentage that they're negative. And so if we're constantly, it's like bringing it forward every day with us, when you do the brain dump, it allows you to get rid of some of that stuff that's like swirling around in your head, because there's a lot of good up there too. You've got the negative, but you've also got the good stuff. So if you can get all of it out, including the negative and the good, you can then kind of say, okay, well, this is over here. This is stuff I've been dealing with. I don't really want to deal with it. Like this is stuff that I don't want to think about. But then over here, there's all these ideas that I have. And, oh yeah, I want to meet with this person. There's a person I just met today and I want to like follow up with that person. All of that's going on in your brain. And if you don't write it down, it can get lost, but also it gets mushed in with everything else. So that's one of the reasons why I love the brain dump so much, because then it allows you to see what you're working with. And sometimes when we can see it in black and white, it doesn't have as much power as it does when it's not written out and you don't see it, when you actually can't like look at it and say, okay, this is something that I really don't think is true. I don't really want it to be true. And it kind of, when you look at it, you think, oh, I don't really know if this is something that I even want to continue thinking, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I love the mind dump. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I love it, and I love that you shared that you have that practice with your husband. I think that's so important. Communication. Again, we can't read each other's minds, and even if someone's to say, "Well, he or she should know me by now," that's still not fair, because we change as we get older, as we have more experiences. So we have to be able to allow for that and give each other the grace to say, this is how I'm feeling. I've got a new way of thinking. As long as we can grow together and keep that open communication, I think that's what's so important, especially like with you being a parent, homeschooling your kids, running a business, having your marriage, and making sure that you cultivate that relationship as well. So I think it's really important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. If you are married, communication is definitely key. For all the reasons you just mentioned. And it also models that to your kids, because they're going to see you, maybe having those Sunday meetings or working not working through an issue necessarily in front of the kids, but just talking to each other, getting on the same page, having discussions together. It does become harder to do that when you have kids because kids demand your attention all the time.
Mhm.
um, but it's also important in those moments too to prioritize your relationship with your partner, with your husband, whoever it is. I'm big on setting boundaries with the kids so that you can have that time with your partner, but also so you can have that time for yourself. And that looks different in each situation, but really it's just, again, communication, talking to your kids about what you need in the moment. So, for example, my meditation that I do meditation every single morning. And sometimes my daughter will come and sit with me. Sometimes she won't. But sometimes I want to be by myself. So I just talk to her and tell her, hey, I'm going to go off into the other room. I'm going to do my meditation. When I come back out, how about we read a chapter of this book? So just communication. It's so important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to talk about high achieving women. Well, I think women nowadays are high achievers because we want more for our lives. Like we have so much opportunity out there. And so I feel as women, we can find ourselves feeling stretched thin constantly because we're giving, especially if you're a mom, you're a parent, you're giving to your families, you have a business, or you might be in corporate, but you might have a corporate position and you might be running a business. You have all of these commitments, whether they're family, personal, professional, whatever that looks like. And a lot of the time that leaves a little space for yourself. So how can women create emotional space? I know that we talked about the brain dump, but how can they create that emotional space and set the boundaries for themselves in a way that really supports both their well-being, their growth, but also shows that they're not, you know, drawing a line in the sand, if you know what I mean?
Well, bringing in that communication piece again, like telling your family how you're feeling because they probably don't know. They might notice like if you are feeling stretched thin, you might be snappy a lot more and they'll probably notice that, but it might not translate to oh mom needs or my wife needs this time to herself. So just being honest. Be honest with your family about how you're feeling. I think it's I think that's really important and something that gets left out sometimes because, again, you think they should know, or sometimes you don't want to feel selfish. It does feel selfish to you to take that time. So you say, well, okay, well, I'll do that later. Maybe when everyone's asleep, then I'll stay up. But then the next morning you're exhausted. So remembering that when you do take that time for yourself, you feel your best and then you're able to give your best to your family. And, if you are working outside of the home or if you have your own business, then you have that energy to give to that too. And you're not feeling resentful. You're feeling energized. You're
Mhm.
feeling fed. I say to practice getting to the place of overflow, not just filling your cup, having it overflow so that that can all just drip down easily to the people around you that you love and that you need to pour into. And it doesn't have to be like you don't have to go out on a retreat. It doesn't have to be this long thing that takes you away. It's most sustainable and best for you if it's a daily practice. Whatever it is for you. Like I keep talking about meditation because that's my thing, but it doesn't have to be that, but it does have to be something that's truly nourishing you. So maybe yoga or exercise or just something. So I know it's common when you notice you have that downtime, then you're just going to go and scroll or zone out in front of the TV. And I'm not saying don't do that. Like we live in the times we live in, it's going to happen. But choose something else. Like I said, that's really going to nourish you, that's really going to fill you up, and communicate that to your family. It really can be that simple, and it might not feel like it's going to work out right away because everyone's getting used to new rhythms and new routines. But just keep enforcing that. And yeah, it's not a line in the sand. If my daughter walks into the room while I'm meditating, I don't yell at her and tell her to leave. I might invite her to just come sit next to me quietly. And sometimes she's still talking, even though I asked her to be quiet. That's just the reality of motherhood. And that's another place where the calming practices come in because it helps me from not snapping at my kids in those types of situations and set firm boundaries, but let it be set in a loving way, in a nurturing way, in a way that they understand and they know that I'm not pushing them away, but that this is feeding me and it's going to allow me to take better care of them later.
Yeah, I love that because I think a lot of the time people look at boundaries as most of the time, I think when I've talked to people is that, don't cross this line, right? And it's like the boundary is really just something that can be put there. And of course, you're trying to encourage someone to understand, like, I need this time for me. This is my time. I need you to wait for me over here and I'll be back, or come sit with me quietly, or I need time for myself to go and unwind. And it's not saying that, oh, I'm closing the door and you are shut out of my life. But a lot of times people do that. They think that boundaries, when they put a boundary in place saying that, you know, the kind that are meant to really become barriers where you are drawing the line in the sand, they're calling them boundaries when really that's a barrier. So a barrier to someone, like, you don't want to speak to them ever again. Well, that's a barrier. I mean, that's not a boundary, but people call them boundaries. So it's like they get them mixed up. The boundary is really not meant to keep people out. It's not a line in the sand. It's just meant to, like, this is what I need. These are my needs. And, we can have a discussion of if you push my boundary or you break my boundary, and especially the ones that we make for ourselves too, which are so important, right? We will sometimes break our own. Time boundaries is an example. I have a time boundary for shutting off by the end, a certain time at the end of the day, and I'm not on social media, my phone, or anything. Like, I'm not on email. That's a boundary I have for myself around my time and my energy and my relationship, because I want to spend time with my husband. But that doesn't mean that something could sometimes, push over the line, and that's fine. It doesn't mean that it's like a line in the sand. Whereas I would have an actual boundary that is kind of close to being a barrier, but it's like, I don't want maybe a client to call me out of the blue if we have a specific structure, the scope of our contract, and then they just call me out of the blue to talk. And that's outside of what we agreed upon, then that can become close to a barrier. But again, it's not keeping them away. It's just opening the discussion to say, hey, this is the parameters that I have set in place, and I need you to respect it. So, I mean, barriers, it can be very borderline. And I think that's why I wanted to ask you about that. What's one boundary that you've used or that's worked for you? Like, it's made a significant difference, even if it's like early on, when you first started coaching all those years ago.
In business,
Yeah, I mean, when you first started in business and becoming a coach, was there boundaries that you learned to put in place that made a difference, especially in the beginning? Sometimes we go over those time limits and, our family's waiting at the dinner table for us. So that's an example, right? And I
mhm.
had a friend who told me her 4-year-old daughter had said, or I think it was her son, had said to her, "Mommy, put your phone away." They were having a family time and she was checking her messages. So I was just curious if there's a boundary that you've had to put in place that's kind of like, I guess, supported both your personal and your professional life.
The biggest boundary that I've had to put into place is my time on social media, because my online presence is so integral to obtaining clients and just to my business in general. I found myself on it too much. And so it was a boundary. It was more so a boundary I set with myself, but it does also benefit my family, because I have had my daughter also and my son be like, I know they're talking to me and I had my phone up and I think I'm listening to them, but I'm not really listening to them. I'm looking at my phone. So when I realized that, I put solid times into place of when I'm doing that so that I can be present, because that's my whole thing is being present with what's in front of me. And my kids do take priority over everything else. So my family in general does.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's important because nobody wakes up in the morning saying, I want to have a day that's full, so completely focused on work and I don't care about everything else. Like, I don't want to have a great day where I have time for myself to go off and have lunch with my friends, or I don't want to play with the kids. Nobody wakes up that way thinking that they don't want all of this, the quality of life. Everyone's looking for quality of life. It's just, how do you incorporate it in, which is really being present, like you were saying.
Mhm.
And I wanted to switch that for just a sec because I know mindfulness, I know there's like the mindfulness meditation. I know a lot of people are afraid of their thoughts, but I know that it can fuel creativity, being mindful. So, can you share how mindfulness practices help unlock that creative process and why it's important for us, both personally and professionally, for our success?
Yes, absolutely. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So, because mindfulness calms your nervous system down, so most of us are living in fight or flight way more than we're meant to. And even it might be just this feeling that's running in the background that you're used to, so you think it's okay, but when you're in fight or flight, it's impossible. Like the way that your physiology is set up, it's impossible to get into that creative mindset because your body and your mind are focused on surviving. Even if there's really nothing going on in that moment that requires you to focus on survival, that's how you're feeling. So then that's how your body's wired. So it's just going to go in that direction. You're just going to keep feeling that same way. But when you practice mindfulness, you're able to calm that nervous system down. You're able to calm your nervous system down. You're able to create space in your mind and it just that's when the creative ideas come, is when you're able to get into that space of calm. So before you have to, if you're coming up with an idea, say you're an entrepreneur and you're coming up with an idea for your next course, you don't want to do it in this frantic kind of energy that might be coming along with, oh, like I really want to create this next course. Let me, no, you want to stop and you want to maybe do some deep breathing and consciously relax your muscles and do that for like even 5 minutes. Even 5 minutes will help you to relax. And then that's when the ideas start to come in. So, yeah, that's,
Yeah. No, but I love that. I think I find like when I am at my most calm,
Mhm.
it's like I can think. It's when we're in that frantic state of being, it's like, "Oh, I've got this to do. Oh, the kids have that. I've got soccer practice, and I've got to do this over here, and I've got this client meeting, and I've got that." And it's like if we're constantly in the doing, because we are, this is just the world we live in today has been such a hustle culture for so long that it's hard. It's now people are starting to realize I want to get away from that hustle culture. Even the younger generation, they want to be in that calmer state. They want more calm, more ease, and still be able to achieve the goals and the dreams that they have for themselves. They don't want to be stressed all the time. They want to be able to be calm and be able to be creative from that space. And I know that especially as women, just women I've talked to, that we want to do more. We're excited because we're now supporting each other. And there's all of these communities that are women led communities of supporting each other, helping each other to create these amazing connections and relationships. But again, still, there's got to come a time when you can switch it off, I guess, or turn it down so that you can actually sit back, relax, and allow yourself to not always just be in the doing, but actually allow yourself to just be. Because in those moments, a lot of great things can be revealed to you. I mean, I've had several downloads. I call them, or I should say, I call them uploads so that I can download them, right? And, I'm right away, like I've got my phone out like, on my phone notes app, or I'm writing it out or I'm typing it out, just depending on, where I am. If I'm walking, then I'm using my phone. If I'm sitting at my desk, then I might use a piece of paper or type. It just depends. But I really feel like that's so important. And what I wanted to ask you is like, what's something simple that someone could do? I know you talked about breathing, but say that they're like women, I guess, especially if you're a mom, if you're trying to like do all of the things because, you can, it doesn't mean that you can't, but there has to come a time when you can actually allow yourself to be calm. So what's something simple that someone could do every day to start, at least to get started with a mindfulness practice?
So I think a body scan is a pretty easy thing to incorporate into your daily routine. I suggest either at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day or both. Can't do it too much, but basically that is starting at the top of your head and you are just relaxing the muscles there. You're relaxing your eyes, you're relaxing your jaw, and you're just going through down your body and relaxing your muscles. And as you're doing that, you can also do deep breathing. You can imagine your breath traveling to those parts of your body. And when you're exhaling, just imagining the muscles relaxing. Bringing in your imagination just helps you feel it even more. So that's a really easy thing that you can do. And it only takes, I don't know, about 5 minutes. You can make it last longer if you want to take that time. And I encourage you to, but it can only take 5 minutes and you're just relaxing. And that puts you in that creative state. And the creative state isn't just for your business or your work. That can also help you come up with solutions for things that are a challenge in your motherhood or in your relationships. It's a solution state as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk about stress. One of the things I talk a lot about is burnout. And I think I talk a lot more now about the symptoms because most women especially don't even talk about burnout. They talk about the symptoms being overwhelmed, they feel fatigue, they're stressed. They don't talk about really that they could be burning out. They talk about having an off day because they didn't sleep well the night before, not looking at the patterns of perhaps the last 2 weeks they've been, burning the candle at both ends, or every day this week they've had maybe 3 or 4 days of back-to-back meetings and pushing their energy and really their resilience to the limit, to the stress limit. So I wanted to ask you what your idea is, what you would think could be some best practices for women to build emotional resilience and manage their stress without it taking over their lives.
So, everything that I've mentioned so far, the meditation, the body scan that I just talked about, getting used to observing yourself. So, this is bringing mindfulness into your daily life. So, there's mindfulness practices of the mindful breathing and mindfulness meditation, but there's also bringing it into your daily life. So, noticing yourself, noticing how you're feeling. I teach what I call a mindful check in that you would do throughout the day to notice how you're feeling. So you're just pausing for about a minute and just taking inventory of how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what thoughts are contributing to the way you're thinking. Is this productive? Not productive, but like, is it good for you? Are you feeling good? If not, where do you want those thoughts to go? What actions do you need to take to give to yourself? Because it is so easy, like I was saying, to get into that autopilot and just go through the day and not even think about yourself. And that's when moms, or anyone, but we're talking about moms, can get into burnout without even knowing it because they're not thinking about themselves. They're not tuning into how they're actually feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, they're so focused on the kids, right?
Yes.
They're focused
Yes.
on everybody else. They're focused on their business. They're focused on if they're married, their spouse. They're focused on if they have, maybe aging parents. They're focused on everybody else, their clients. And I get it because women are nurturers. It's just, it, for the most part, most of the women I know have that quality of being that nurturer, that maternal instinct. Like I'm not a mom, but I still feel like when I see kids, I'll be thinking like, oh, that child is walking by himself or herself or standing in the store by herself. Like I'm looking around for the parent. So I feel like there's that. I just feel like even my friends, sometimes I could see that they were putting everybody above themselves. And that can lead to resentment, not because they want to, but because if you continue, like you said, on autopilot, continuously putting yourself last, continuously maybe falling off the radar because everybody else's needs come above your own, everything else comes first, that at some point you can burn out. And that burnout can turn to snapping at your family, not giving them, you know, being mad at them for things that probably wouldn't bother you before, but because it's been built up, right? So I think that it's really important to realize that we need to take that step back and take care of us, because then we're modeling it. Like I'm sure you're modeling that for your kids. You're modeling that for your spouse. You're modeling that for your marriage. You're showing also your kids what a healthy, happy marriage can look like for them if and when they decide to go out when they're older and meet somebody that they want to spend their life with. I feel that teaching moment right from the very beginning, not, you know, like years later, like a lot of us finally stepped into self-development. I didn't until like 2017. So, I mean, I lived almost my whole life, well, not my whole life, but I lived a lot of my life before I finally stepped into the self-development. So
Mhm.
anyhow, I really appreciate that. So I have one last question for you.
Sure.
You, you believe that success shouldn't come at the expense of well-being. So if you could give one piece of advice to a woman who might feel like she's doing it all, but she's not feeling fulfilled, what would it be?
Well, I would have to have her ask herself why she's not feeling good. Like that, if she doesn't know why she's not feeling good, then that means she's been ignoring herself for who knows how long. She's been ignoring the subtle signs because they start as subtle signs of just maybe tension headaches, or you notice that brain fog but you say, "Oh, that's normal," and you just keep going on with your life. That's someone who hasn't been paying attention to themselves for a long time. So the first thing that you need to do is slow down and start paying attention to yourself. Like I was talking about with the mindful check-ins, set some timers on your phone so that you can remember because you're not in the habit of it yet, so that you can remember to, oh, I need to think about myself. Maybe you need, if you have the ability to stop and restructure your life. Everyone's looking for work life balance. I like to think of it as harmony. So your work life balance, everything is equal. For harmony, things something may take center stage and then it pulls back, and then you're focusing on the other thing, and it all kind of flows together and creates this beautiful music of your life. But so restructuring, for that woman, she would need to start restructuring her life in a way to support herself. As you were just saying, moms are thinking about their kids a lot and wanting to just give and give and give and give and give, but you have to take that time to receive too. If you're not, you are going to burn out. It may look like you have it all from the outside, but if on the inside you're feeling like, I don't even know what I'm doing, I don't even know who I am anymore, I never have time for myself, that's where you need to start putting that energy. That's the missing piece. It seems so obvious, but when you're in it, it's not obvious. When you're in it, it's like, okay, maybe I need to get another planner, or like maybe, I need this thing outside of me, but it always comes back to you.
Yeah. And you reminded me of like even my question that I had. I spent in my early to mid 40s, I started thinking about I wanted to make a change in my life. Like I wanted to do something more fulfilling. And I wasn't sure what that could be. And I kind of just went along with just more years going by. And almost 10 years later, I ended up asking myself, is this all there is to life for me? Is this it? Right? That was my rock bottom. Like, is this it? Because I am so deeply unhappy and I really don't like my life. And that was like where I felt like I was doing so much, and I didn't have children, but I was doing so much, for my family and not really having anything for me, nothing left over for me. I was giving everything to everyone else and I didn't feel fulfilled. And that's why I wanted to ask that question for you today, because I really felt way back then, if this is it, like, I don't know, like for the rest of my life, this is it. This is how I'm going to live my life. And I'm really glad that I was able to have enough sense to say, snap out of it for myself, because I didn't really have anybody. I didn't really know about self-development world other than, I knew who Tony Robbins was, but that was it. That he was the only life coach out there that I even knew existed. And I finally decided I want my life to be different. And I told my husband, I said, we need to make change. Number one, because I didn't feel like I was going to be around much longer. I felt like I was headed for an early grave. But number two is I just don't like my life. I don't like the person that I've become. And there's got to be something better. And I think that at least got me started. But yeah, taking back my time, like it was a radical move for me because I quit a full-time job and had no real plan, except I did create something into entrepreneurship, but it was scary. And I would prefer that women can listen to this podcast and listen to women like yourself to say, hey, you don't have to go to that radical move right now. Like, don't have to hit rock bottom, but you can actually just start saying to yourself, what's going on? Like, start looking at becoming more intentional about checking in with yourself, doing a body scan, taking some time for yourself, doing those deep breaths. Meditation is wonderful. It's so calming. It's very grounding. I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's really grounding. And yeah, just having, like, as I said, women like you on the show. So thank you so much, Merrissa, for spending time with me today and sharing about how you help women clear mental clutter, to help them to set boundaries and really align their lives with what matters. I know it's really needed in this world, especially because I feel like we're still living in a hustle culture, even if we're saying we're trying to get away from it. And I've really loved your thoughts on how mindfulness fuels creativity, because I truly believe that. I agree with you. And how we can create space for ourselves without guilt is so important. Just having those conversations, right? And
Yes.
how living with intention leads to more ease and fulfillment. So I know so many women are listening today are going to walk away feeling empowered to make meaningful shifts in their lives that lead to more aligned and thriving life for them. So thanks so much for being here
Yes.
today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Merrissa directly and learn more about her work, you can find her contact information in the show notes. Remember, creating a life that supports both your ambitions and your well-being isn't about doing more. It's about being intentional with where you place your time, your energy, and your focus. When you give yourself permission to live in alignment with what truly matters, everything else falls into place. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Why is it that games make us feel so good or completely rage quit? These emotions we feel are mostly not an accident. People like me designed them. I'm Chris Cross, and this is Brain Arcade, a podcast all about the psychology of game design and why games hit us so hard. Each week, I bring on a new guest, designers, psychologists, storytellers, to break it all down with me. If you play, design, or just love games, follow now.
Electricast.